Kinji Hakari is a pretty interesting case because depending on who you're talking to, he's either really overrated or underrated. And in today's video, I'm going to be discussing why I think most fans underrate him actually. Now this video is going to be split into 4 parts. The first part is going to be me basically wanking Hakari and saying why he's so strong. The second part is going to be me explaining his weaknesses and his downside. The third part is me giving the conclusion and my final thoughts on Hakari. And the final part is actually going to be me talking about the comments that you guys left in response to my community post. Now before I wank Hakari, first thing I should explain is, funny enough, Hakari is exactly like Yuta, but actually the complete opposite situation in terms of what the fanbase thinks. So let me just say, Yuta is stronger than Hakari. So I did make a video explaining what Yuta versus Hakari would look like. I'm not going to spoil that video or what my conclusion is, but yes, I do think Yuta is stronger than Hakari. Not that Hakari is a pushover though. However, Yuta is actually way more overrated by the general fanbase, actually a lot more. He has many super fans compared to Hakari. So yes, even though Yuta is stronger, Hakari is far more underrated since a lot of people think he's weak. The ratio that I've seen so far has to be 5% of fans think Yuta is underrated, 15% of fans pretty much scale him about where he is, you know, in the mid-range, and 80% of fans really overrate Yuta. Hakari is the complete opposite situation, where Hakari has 80% of the people that I've seen in my comments really underrated. Probably about 10% scale him where he is, give him like an unbiased, reasonable take, and then the other 10% really wank him and overscale. So I really can't tell if this is the Jujutsu community at large or if it's just my community, but from what I've seen, I actually think it's the whole Jujutsu Kaisen community that really loves to overscale Yuta. And again, not that Yuta is weak, Yuta is an absolute monster. Now to explain why Hakari is just so unbelievably strong. Now, first thing, we gotta explain his domain expansion, Restless Gambler, also known as Idle Death Gambler. It just depends on what translation you're looking at, which contains the ability of Pure Love Train, which is a sure hit technique that's harmless, which means that it can even bypass simple domains, which are completely ineffective against it. And also a very unique aspect to Hakari's domain that so far, Hakari's domain is the only domain like this, but Hakari's domain is not affected by the tug of war in domain expansion battles, so there is no pulling or pushing with Hakari's domain against other people's domains. Now to explain Hakari's domain, it's going to be like a 20-minute video. Funny enough, I did make a 10-minute full video explaining his domain, which actually got copyright striked and taken down by Shueisha, so I can't even recommend that video. But worry not, I'm not going to go super in-depth. However, I'm going to be talking about the complex aspects of his domain and more of the in-depth stuff that people just don't realize. So the first thing is, Hakari's domain being 1 out of 239 chances of hitting a jackpot is a complete lie, by the way. It's a complete BS lie. The reality is, Hakari's domain, when he's lucky, the chances of Hakari hitting a jackpot is actually 1 in 7, 1 in 10. On average, it's probably 1 in 15, and on an unlucky day, it's 1 of 30. At the very unluckiest that he's ever been, it was 1 out of 30, and that's confirmed. Now, the reason that this is the case is because his domain has a lot of intricacies and small details, just many small little details that really rig his domain to favor him, to keep hitting jackpot. It's absolutely crazy just how rigged his domain is. I would have really loved to just recommend my video that I made on his domain, but it got copyright strike, so I can't. But the way it works is that Kashimo is the casino. The casino always wins. The house always wins, as the saying goes. Hakari's domain is just so unbelievably rigged to, first of all, allow him to hit jackpot. But what it's even more rigged for is that once he hits the first jackpot, he is going to keep hitting jackpots over and over again. So this is what I mean by Hakari is underrated. And I don't blame people for doing this, because I was actually like this maybe only until a couple weeks ago, where I thought Hakari was really luck-based. I mean, even in my video where I discuss Yuta versus Hakari, I actually talk a lot about how Hakari is just too luck-based or too RNG-based, and I downplay him because of that. Though over the 2-3 weeks, I've actually been really educated, I've done a lot of research on this topic, and I've talked to a lot of people on this, and that's why I've come to the realization that, yeah, his domain is unbelievably rigged, and it's not as luck-based as you think. As time and time again, it's shocked even Kashimo, who at one point even thought he was lucky, which, yes, there was a tiny bit of luck in that. Let me explain a bit more. Obviously, I'm not going to go too in-depth about it, which I know will upset a few people, but again, this is not a video explaining his domain, so I'm just going to really briefly go over this. But pretty much his domain, after he first hits his first jackpot at least, is really rigged to allow him to hit his second, third, fourth jackpot, even his fifth jackpot. And the way this works is, let's say his first jackpot is uneven or even. Now this actually depends on what his next jackpot will be. So for example, if he hits 333 or 555 or 222 on his Richii spin, then this actually decides if he gets increased probability or if he gets increased spins. Now let me explain what both of these means. Increased probability pretty much allows him to have pseudo immortality. So he's in quotes killable, but the reality is he's not killable. So yes, he's technically in base and he's not as strong and he can die, but in increased spins, he can keep hitting pseudo spins to allow him to relive or even regain, I think that's a better word, to get all of his infinite cursed energy for like a second or two. And in that second, he can pretty much revive himself because he has infinite cursed energy and the reverse cursed energy automatically activates, and it also fully restores all of his cursed energy in that second. So technically, yes, he's killable, But the reality is he's not, because even if you break his neck, like Kashimo was bodying him in base when he was increased probability. He was just being on him and snapping his neck again and again and again. But then every time he did, for just that 1 second, he would use increased probability, which is pseudo spins, just keep reviving himself over and over. So yes, when you first look at it, increased probability seems weak just by looking at the rules, but then when you look at the in-depth rules and how it actually works, it's just rigged so that after he hits his first jackpot, and if he gets increased probability, he's guaranteed to hit that second one, because you're not going to kill him in increased probability until he gets that second jackpot. And now back to the other possibility, increased spins. Increased spins is so underrated. Even Kashimo really underestimated this. Now remember what I told you about how Hakari's domain is super rigged to favor him to keep hitting jackpots, how on his very unluckiest day it took him only 30 spins. Remember, out of 239 chances, it took him 30 spins on his unluckiest day ever to hit jackpot, and on an average day it's like 10 to 15, lucky day maybe 5 to 7. Imagine how quickly he's going to hit jackpot if he's going increased spin. This is why Kashimo was shocked, and his own words were, Kinji Hakari is incredibly lucky. Or perhaps I think that was even the authors. Yes, Hakari had a tiny bit of luck, but the reality is when his odds are so in his favor, because remember, Kashimo is the casino. It's rigged to favor him. He owns the casino. He's gonna keep hitting these jackpots, and if you give him increased spins so he can just keep spamming his spins, what do you think is gonna happen? That's why he actually hit his jackpot in a couple seconds. Remember, I think it was like 5 or 6 seconds that he hit his jackpot and increased spins. And keep in mind that's him being a bit lucky. Even if he wasn't super lucky, which people always claim in increased spins, which, you know, it may have been that, it might even actually take him in normal situation only 20 to 30 seconds to hit jackpot again after increased spins. Maybe that's like a stretch. 40 seconds, an even bigger stretch at most. So the issue of Hakari is hitting the first jackpot, you know, it takes a while, as we've seen in Charles. It's like a 1 in 15 chance in general. So yeah, it's not perfect, but the thing is, the chances are not that bad. It's not 1 out of 239. Because remember, there are so many aspects to his domain. The hype train. Like seriously, I really wish I could just link that video without copyright strike. So there's like 20 minutes of information that I'm not including. And again, I apologize. Even in the double page spread that we get that shows what his abilities are, that doesn't even tell us half of what it actually does. It's nuts. Okay, so he gets his first jackpot. Second jackpot is pretty much guaranteed because of either increased spins or increased probability. Third jackpot is pretty much guaranteed because of increased spins or increased, so it's one of the two, right? Now his fourth jackpot is really likely to hit even after the third one, because of something called the rainbow jackpot, which is something we never actually got to see. Pretty much when he's on his fourth attempt of hitting a jackpot, what can happen is he can actually see the rainbow colors on his door or the balls he throw, which guarantee another jackpot. What's even crazier about this is that we don't even know what special abilities that this rainbow jackpot gives, because it's called rainbow jackpot. It's going to have some extraordinary extra ability. It might give him a super weapon. It might give him an hour of jackpot. We don't know, but the odds are, obviously it's not confirmed, but the odds are, it's called rainbow jackpot, it's probably going to give him some big boost. And what's even crazier is that we've never even seen Hakari hit the 777 spin. So on his Richii spins where you can get the numbers, we've never actually seen him hit 777. So this is a pretty unlikely theory, if anything. Actually, the rainbow jackpot is a pretty good theory to be true, but this one's less likely. But people theorize that if he hits 777, something incredible might happen, such as maybe he gets an extra jackpot, maybe he gets 8 minutes instead of 4. But yeah, just a possibility that Hakari's domain has a lot more potentially that we don't even know about, especially that rainbow jackpot, because who knows what that'll give. Maybe some extra damage, maybe some secret weapon, maybe an hour of jackpot. Maybe that's too crazy, but it will give him something at the very least, because it is called rainbow jackpot, and it's something he didn't even need to use against Kashimo, which is absolutely crazy. Though in all fairness, Kashimo did blow up his arm, so he couldn't go into his fourth jackpot anyway, because Kashimo is pretty intelligent. So obviously he's an immortal, he's got infinite cursed energy, so his punches are going to hit like trucks. He's actually very similar to Yuta. Yuta's output, this is a very big misconception in the whole fan base. Yuta's output is nothing special. It's actually pretty average. But what makes Yuta incredibly powerful is his overall amount of cursed energy, because having more cursed energy reinforces your hits and defense like crazy. As Ryu Ishigori says, it's like hitting a water tank. And as we've seen with Hakari, his output in base and in his jackpot state is the same. His punches are dozens of times stronger just because his overall cursed energy increased. In the same way that Yuta having so much cursed energy reinforces his body and makes him just so unbelievably powerful, Hakari in jackpot state is the same. So obviously if you've seen his fight with Kashimo, my man is punching away whole crates, punching through carrier crates like it's Dio versus Jotaro. It's absolutely crazy just how fast and how strong he is to keep up with Kashimo, one of the strongest Culling Game members in the whole series, and the man of the most points. Having infinite cursed energy is no joke, and obviously he gets immortality, as I said earlier, because of his automatic reverse curse technique. So obviously Hakari doesn't actually know how to use reverse curse technique. You need a lot of insight and deep knowledge into Jujutsu sorcery, but when he has infinite cursed energy, he's actually got so much that his body just performs it on autopilot. It's not even low tier reverse curse technique, it's actually the mid tier, which actually allows him to remove poisons from his body even. Now whether Hakari has the highest tier of reverse curse technique, which not even Gojo has, this is to heal other people. Only 3 people have actually known this ability, being Sukuna when he healed Megami, Shoko who 100% has it, and Yuta who has healed multiple people too. So we don't actually know if he has the highest tier, but at the very least, the mid tier of reverse curse technique is nuts. And reverse curse technique eats away at your cursed energy like crazy. Even Yuta, after a few minutes, was beginning to run out of his cursed energy after fighting Udo and Ryu for a bit. Yeah, reverse curse technique takes up a lot, but Hakari, having infinite, can just spam it non-stop. So yeah, he's got the speed, he's got the power, he's got infinite regeneration, and of course his domain is rigged so that after he hits the first jackpot, my man's gonna keep hitting it over and over and over again. Once he's got that first one, he's secured for at least 4 or 5. It's absolutely crazy. So the misconception that Hakari can only be at max for 4 minutes, in all fairness, I don't want to bash people for thinking that. I thought that as well. I mean, even when you really look into his ability, it's still really hard to understand. There's a lot of writing that's just done in between the lines that you need to really see. So yeah, that was a lot of Hakari wank right there. So this is what I mean by he's underrated. People think he's just too luck based, and unfortunately because he fought Kashimo, just an absolute monster and terror, one of the strongest sorcerers in all of history, and also one of the strongest members in all of the culling games. Basing it off points, he is the strongest member in the culling games, though I do think Yuta is stronger than him, to be fair. No, including Yuta, he is the strongest member of the culling games. I think he's even stronger than Ryu Ishigori, who, to be fair, Ryu Ishigori does have a high output, but high output is not everything. Kashimo is just a beast, so a lot of people really underrate both Hakari and Kashimo, unfortunately, because both of these monsters fought each other and it seemed really even, which is a shame because they are both disgustingly powerful. It's seriously crazy just how deadly, lethal, and unbelievably destructive they are. One of the worst takes that I've seen for Hakari is that, oh, he's only got punches and kicks. He's not that strong. He has nothing that's lethal. My guy, this guy punches through a steel crate, sends it flying, and leaves a fucking crater in it. He's dented the thing in half. He can punch through steel like it's nothing. In terms of lethality, if Hakari were to punch in Jackpot is what I mean. If he were to punch any grade 1 sorcerer in the whole series, Supreme grade 1 or grade 1, he would blow their heads off with one punch. People underestimate how strong Hakari is because Kashimo tanked the shots, and unfortunately this actually means people underestimate and underrate Kashimo too. These two are both absolute monsters, and it's just a shame that they both get underrated. So now you see what I mean when I say Yuta is stronger than Hakari. I will give him that, but Yuta is way more overrated compared to Hakari, who just gets underrated and underestimated. And if you've been enjoying the video so far, please do consider subscribing. I have a ton of JJK content just like this on my channel. Now to get into some weaknesses for good old Hakari. So the first weakness that I'm going to mention is something that's really controversial actually, and I don't think a lot of Hakari fans are going to agree with me on this, but it's that I think his base form is not that strong. And now what I mean by not that strong is that I think it's only in base Supreme grade 1 level, which is already crazy strong. Like seriously, I'm saying in base he competes with characters like Naoya or Nobito or Choso or even Yuji, which is really crazy. And to be honest, I don't see him being these characters at base. Maybe he can. It'd be extreme high dip. But there are people who actually think Hakari in base is special grade level, which is absolutely crazy. And it's actually said quite a lot. So that's what I mean by people are going to disagree with this take. But let me just say this. I don't think Hakari in base is weak. I just think he's not as strong as people think he is. And yes, I know Supreme grade 1 might not actually be a power scaling thing, but I just like to say that as a distinction between the stronger grade 1 sorcerers. It's kind of my own power scaling thing. Let's say base Hakari is Supreme grade 1. So he's the strongest of all the grade 1 sorcerers. He's in that tier, which I think is being generous, but I actually do place in there just to give him a little wank. These guys are only as strong as 3, maybe at best 4-fingered Sukuna. Maybe as well. Like that is a big stretch to even say 4. Maybe even 3 is a big stretch. Compare this to Jackpot Hakari, who scales to 15 fingers. For various reasons, I mean that's a whole topic in a whole other day to be honest. But Hakari and Jackpot scales to the high tiers. He scales to characters like Yuta, Ryu Ishigori, Udo. He even scales way above characters like Jogo. In Jackpot he is no joke. But his base, it's not weak per se, it's still very strong, but compared to the top tiers, his base is nothing. And this is for many reasons, like in his fight against Charles for example, he's not that destructive. The most important example is his showcasing against Kashimo in base when he had increased probability. Now this is the biggest misconception in the whole series, and people really overrate his base because of this. Now there was a moment after his first jackpot and before his second jackpot where Hakari had increased probability and he was taking on Kashimo, and people think, oh, in base to base he was going hand to hand with Kashimo, he must scale relative to Kashimo in base. Absolutely not. I urge you to reread just that section of the fight where it's increased probability base versus Kashimo. Reread that whole fight. Hakari does not land a single blow against Kashimo the whole fight, not a single blow. At best, he had one of his punches deflected upwards by Kashimo. Other than that, he got absolutely battered and he got killed repeatedly, non-stop while he was in base. Time and time again, he got his neck snapped and snapped over and over. Only thing that actually kept Hakari alive was the increased probability, which kept resurrecting him and replenished all his cursed energy. If you actually look at that fight, not only does he not land a single punch in base, he can't even keep up with Kashimo. Kashimo was killing him over and over again. Hakari, thank God he had increased probability, or he would have died then and there. He would have had his neck snapped the first time and then it would have been over in a couple seconds. But of course, increased probability resurrects you and replenishes all your cursed energy. This is why Hakari needed to start the fight against Kashimo with Jackpot. That's why he had the Charles fight. And this gets into my second point. Hakari in Jackpot is easily super high tier. He is of the highest tiers in the whole series, obviously excluding Sakuda and Gojo. In Jackpot, he can tango with the strongest characters in the whole series and honestly beat a lot of them. However, the issue lies in him hitting his first Jackpot. Now, I've discussed this in my Hakari vs Yuta and especially in my Hakari vs Ryu Ishigori video, where the issue is when he starts the fights against these high tiers like Kashimo Ishigori in base, he needs to hit his first Jackpot somehow, and that's going to take a bit of time because yes, his domain is rigged to allow him to keep hitting Jackpots after his first one, but it's not rigged to allow him to hit his first Jackpot, even though his first Jackpot has pretty good odds, like 1 out of 7 to 1 out of 20, 1 out of 30 on a bad day. But if he fights these high tiers, now think about this, the characters like Kashimo and Ryu Ishigori, they scale to 15-fingered Sukuna. And remember, Ryu Ishigori has higher output than full-powered Sukuna, confirmed by Kenjaku, who knows how strong full-powered Sukuna is. And it's also confirmed by all the sorcerers in history too. And don't get me wrong, Ryu Ishigori would get no diffed by full-powered Sukuna, since of course output isn't everything, but in terms of output, Ishigori is a beast. And then Kashimo, I actually think is really relative to this. Kashimo is a freak of nature. Had Hakari started his fight against sorry, did I just mix their names? Against Kashimo in base, he would have gotten his ass demolished, absolutely curb stomped. Remember, Kashimo is a no-nonsense, no BS character. He did not let Panda even have time to think, not even to finish his first fort before he went in and punched a hole through his stomach. And then in a couple seconds, he dismantled him. And then even after Panda transformed into his Rhino state, he killed him in probably less than a second, considering how fast that lightning was. So he beat Panda in a couple seconds, not even giving him time to think. What do you think he's going to do to base Hakari? Kashimo and Ryu Ishigori are absolute monsters. These are some of the strongest sorcerers in all of history. You cannot compare them to measly grade 1 or supreme grade 1 sorcerers. If you know how scaling in this series works, these two characters would one-shot any grade 1 sorcerer. Be it Nanami, be it Todo, be it Mei. These absolute behemoths would one-shot all of them, especially Ishigori's Karante Blast. And I'm not even talking about their curse techniques, I am talking just about their normal output and normal punches. And now that I've wanked those guys a bit, what do you think is going to happen to base Hakari had he seen Kash in base? So had he not met Charles and he saw Kashimo first, even if he activated his domain expansion as fast as he could, he would have died in a couple seconds. It's the same case with Ishigori, because these two are no bullshit, no nonsense, straight for the kill characters. They do not mess around. Ishigori didn't even speak to Yuta or Uro before he hit them with a massive Garante blast that just eviscerated massive buildings and whole blocks. So this is a big weakness to Hakari, only when he fights the high tiers, is that in base he would get absolutely donkey slapped. Again, I know his base being weak or strong is very controversial. I don't think his base is that weak. I really do think he is, of all the grade 1 sorcerers in base alone, very powerful. It's just that these super high tiers make grade 1 sorcerers look like absolute fodder. Remember what Maki did to the Zenin clan? If you put Kashimo or Ishigori in that situation, it would have ended faster. I'm not even kidding. Dear God, imagine what Kashimo would have done in that situation. I don't even think that would have been enough time to kill his boredom had he gone up against the entire Zenin clan. So yeah, I guess that's only a weakness specifically against these high tier characters, in my opinion. Obviously, if he fights like normal grade 1 sorcerers, or even if he fights special grade curses, he would last in grade 1. He would last in base. His base is not fodder tier. It's just that these insane high tier characters will make it look like fodder. However, obviously the go around to this is that you could just hit Jackpot in another circumstance or in another way and then enter the fight with these high tiers. But of course, if he just runs into Kashimo first, well, he's kind of screwed, isn't he? Now, my conclusion to Hakari is underrated. Even with this glaring weakness, which I think most people can agree with, maybe not the Hakari superfans, which would say his base is stronger. Fair enough, I just really disagree with that take. That's just my opinion. But overall, Hakari is insanely underestimated and underrated by the fan base as a whole, because people just think his ability is purely luck based. It's not. It's really favored for him to keep hitting jackpots over and over again. I mean, once he gets his first jackpot, which the odds are already so in his favor to his first one, once he hits that first one, he's set to hit 3 or 4, potentially even 5 jackpots. So this notion that Hakari can only last 4 minutes 11 seconds at his max power is an incorrect one. Now, I do understand why people do not get this at first, or it's really hard to accept this take or to really understand it. I mean, for the longest time, even I just thought Hakari was just really luck based. I mean, watch my Yuta versus Hakari video. I just go on about how I think he's just too luck based and he's RNG based. I thought that was a weakness of it. You know, after looking into it a lot, like seriously, I looked into this guy too much because I had to make videos about him for Ishigori and all these other videos, just debating people in the comments. Like, my god, the amount of people I've debated about Hakari, and I learned a lot. His domain is the casino, and as they say, the house always wins. And now for the poll. So there were 129 votes, at least at the time of recording this. There's probably more by the time this video actually comes out. About 25% said he's overrated, about 25% said he's underrated, and then about 50% think he's correctly scaled, which is really funny. So it's like 25% in one extreme, 25% in the other extreme, 50% in the middle. I think there was a graph in statistics, I don't remember what it was called, but it actually fits exactly what this model looks like. So yeah, I posted this in the community tab, which you can check out. I do ask questions like these and include them in the videos from time to time, as well as post some memes. So I'm actually going to spend some time seeing what you guys think about Hakari. Alright, so first up we have GODLIKE. So this guy is actually a pretty regular commenter on the channel, absolute legend by the way, and yeah, he really loves Hakari. He always gasses up Hakari, rightfully so. Hakari is underrated. GODLIKE says his base form is so underrated. Now again, as I said in the video, a lot of people disagree with my take on his base, which actually comes into the comment right beneath his by Nathaniel W, another guy who comments quite frequently on the channel. He says, underrated, I'm going to wait to see him fight in base more and wait for a 7-7 jackpot, which I think is going to be special. So this goes along the lines of what I said earlier in the video, how some people think his 7-7 jackpot is going to be something. There have been quite a few comments saying that, more so about the rainbow, but there have been those who also say his 7-7 jackpot is something. But again, this is actually another comment talking about his base. So his base seems to be the most controversial aspect of Hakari, because his base is really confusing to scale by most fans. And obviously this is because the only true fight he's had in base, not including the Yuji one, was against Charles. Only other time he's fought in base was when he had increased probability against Kashimo, where he got bodied, but it doesn't look that way because he keeps reviving. So yeah, very confusing to say the least. John Howell says, I honestly enjoyed Hakari fight more than Yuta for some reason. It was a thrill and someone dealing with an individual who's immortal for a little. I actually completely agree with this. His fight, people actually say it was the best fight in the whole series, the Kashimo versus Hakari one. And without a doubt, it was so fun to watch. Kashimo tried to kill an immortal. He tried poison, he tried to destroy his head of lightning, he tried to just rip his head apart as well. He tried to kill him while using increased probability. Yeah, it was really fun to see people deal with an immortal character. Dwani Breed, now this guy is an absolute legend. He's actually one of the oldest subscribers on my channel. He's been around for a couple of years. Absolute legend. And he says Hakari definitely overrated. People wank him up so much because they don't understand his ability. Ability revolves around luck, so his power level will never be clear, but I'm sure his strength is capped at least somewhere. Now, Dwani Breed, listen man, you're an absolute legend, but this video is actually discussing the opposite of what you said. I think it's the more you understand his ability, the more you realize it's just so unbelievably rigged in his favor and it's not luck based. So you can agree to disagree, but there is just so much evidence supporting the fact that his domain is just rigged to allow him to keep hitting jackpots. You first. No, you first. Okay. Bad puns aside, because yeah, my comedy is absolutely dead. He says, I think Hakari is downplayed a bit because he didn't one-shot Kashimo. People are under the belief that if you don't curb stop someone, then you're fodder, not even considering the fact that maybe Kashimo is just really freaking strong. Not to break anyone's rose-tinted glasses, but the only characters that do that are Gojo and Sukuna, you know, the top of the verse contenders. I absolutely agree with this comment, though this is actually something I talked about a lot. Kashimo and Hakari are both absolute demons and monsters in their own right, and it's unfortunate how they both fought each other, so they both don't seem as strong as they are because they didn't end the fights instantly. The reason is because they're both of the highest tiers. Because of this, it seems like maybe they're both not that strong, which isn't the case. So great comment, you first. I agree with that. And now for Step, an absolutely legendary guy. He's been an active member of the community, so shout out my man Step. This is quite a lengthy comment, so I'm just going to really abridge it. So beside the fact that he's saying people don't understand how his abilities work, something I also agree with, he says his base is really underrated, and this is because he doesn't take his fights seriously in base, and that this makes him seem weak in base, which is a fair take. Compliments his character, comparing him to Zaraki, and says how he's a pretty deep character. And his second paragraph is actually along the lines of what I was saying, how his domain is really rigged and how he still has that hidden jackpot which we didn't see. So I think he's referring to the rainbow jackpot actually, so that's the jackpot that we didn't get to see. But yeah, his comment is really good. If you want to, you can just pause the video and read it. A really good take. It gives you a lot of insight into what people think about Hakari. And the last comment is from Melon Lord. Love the name, big fan of Avatar and a really big fan of TOPH. Melon Lord is a legend, also comments quite frequently on the channel, so shout out my guy. So again, so the first half of his paragraph is saying how he's really underrated and how people just really underrate his character because they think it's luck or plot armor based, which again, this whole video has explained why it's not, how his domain is rigged to favor him. I agree with that. And now to quote him, what I love about Hakari Hakari is that he always gives you the impression that he's having the time of his life. When the stakes are high, he thrives, and so the second half is just complimenting Hakari's character, which is really fair. Hakari is just a fantastic character. I mean, you're really gonna have to search hard to find someone who doesn't like Hakari's character, who hates him. I think most people can agree. Hakari's character is absolutely awesome. Yeah, great insight from Melon Lord, and thank you to everyone who commented and shared your insight to everyone else. And yeah, I will be asking questions like this and doing polls and such and posting memes in my community tab, so yeah, I would recommend checking that out. It's really fun, and it allows me to actually directly ask you guys questions, which I absolutely love. And yeah, that's the video explaining why Hakari is underrated and underestimated. Now, this video is actually 43 minutes as I'm recording. Obviously, I'm going to shorten it down. It's probably going to be 25 minutes, 20 minutes by this point, depending on how much I cut out, because usually I cut out a lot of stuff. But yeah, with this video, there's a lot of it that I don't want to cut out, so I'm actually going to have this be a longer one. So yeah, apologies if the video is too long. Let me know if you prefer the 10-minute, 15-minute videos or the longer ones like this, because if it's too long, I'll just stick to the 10, 15-minute ones, because also that is in my benefit too, because it's easier to make those ones. But I did want to do Hakari justice, because in the Yuta is overrated. Honestly, I should have made that video double the length it is to just really sell all my points, so I want to give everything I have to explaining why Hakari is underrated, and I want to do this video just. And yeah, if you enjoy the video, please do consider subscribing. I have a ton of Jujutsu Kaisen content just like this, and even content specifically on Hakari, such as Hakari vs Ryuichi Gori and Hakari vs Yuta. So yeah, subscribe if you're into JJK. And again, much love to everyone who commented in the community tab. Your insight was really helpful for the video, and thank you to everyone who's an active member in the community. Even if you're just watching the videos and you never comment, or if you're actively commenting, and even if I disagree with you, to everyone, lurkers and people who are commenting, I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much, because it has been so fun to make Jujutsu Kaisen content lately. Now, I'm not gonna get too sappy on you guys, you know, but yeah, thank you, it's really cool. And if you've made it this far into the video, you're an absolute legend, and you're a part of the Higuruma fan club. Welcome. And yeah, that's all. Take care and have a nice day, everyone. See you.